The morning sun crept across the tiled floor of the old farmhouse, streaking the dusty windows in warm gold. Elara Gray sat at the kitchen table, barely breathing. Before her, in a neat stack, were letters that bore the crests of the nation's most prestigious universities. Thick, embossed envelopes from Crestmore Institute, Alderhill University, Southford Tech, and the jewel in the crown, Selwyn University. She had saved the Selwyn letter for last. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Congratulations," it began. Her vision blurred. She bit her lip, holding back the rising wave of emotion. Selwyn wasn't just another college. It was the college. The one she had dreamed about for as long as she could remember. She stood up, clutching the letter tightly. "Mom? Dad?" She called down the hallway, her voice shaky but hopeful. "I got in." Footsteps answered. Slow, deliberate. Miriam, her mother, appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her worn house robe, face unreadable. Alan, her stepfather, followed, his expression closed off, arms folded. Elara smiled, expecting tears, laughter, something. But all she got was a nod. "That's good," Miriam said flatly, exchanging a glance with Alan. A beat passed. Then Alan motioned toward the chair. "Sit down, Elara. We need to talk." Her heartbeat quickened. She slowly sank into the seat, clutching the acceptance letter in her lap like it might vanish. "It's about Damon," Alan began. Her stomach clenched. Of course. Damon. Her older stepbrother. 3 years older, loud, charismatic, with big dreams and an even bigger ego. He'd floated from one scheme to another: food delivery app, cryptocurrency, AI personal trainers, none of them lasting longer than 6 months. Alan continued. "He's working on something that's finally showing promise. A drone-based logistics platform. He's got investors interested. But to take it to the next level, he needs capital." Miriam nodded. "And we've decided to support him." Elara stared at them. "What does that mean?" Alan didn't flinch. "We've given him the college fund." Silence. She blinked. "What?" "All of it," Miriam added, almost too quickly. The words struck like ice water. "That money was for my education," Elara whispered, her throat closing. Alan leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "We had to make a choice. Damon's startup could change everything for this family. You're smart, you'll find another way." Elara shook her head slowly, as if trying to wake from a dream. "But you promised. You told me if I kept my grades up, did all the right things." "College isn't going anywhere," Miriam interrupted. "You can take a year off, maybe do a semester at Elmridge Community. There's always a plan B." Plan B. That's what she was to them. Always the safe bet, the one who never caused trouble. The one who followed the rules, covered for Damon, did chores without being asked, got scholarships without fanfare. They hadn't even asked her. "Just tell me," she said, her voice like broken glass, "how much?" Alan shifted in his seat, suddenly uneasy. "All of it," Miriam whispered. 210,000. Every dollar. Birthday bonds. Scholarship stipends. The savings her grandparents started before they passed. Her part-time tutoring money. Gone. She stood up so fast her chair screeched across the floor and toppled over. "Did you even consider what this would do to me?" Alan slammed his palm on the table. "This was a family decision. I'm part of this family," she shouted back. But the truth hung in the air, unspoken and suffocating. No, she wasn't. Not really. She was the one they assumed would endure. The one they believed would understand. And in that moment, Elara understood something far more painful: they had never planned for her future. Only Damon's. No tears came as she walked upstairs. In her room, the walls were lined with framed certificates, medals, and sticky notes with quotes from physicists and CEOs. A bulletin board with a roadmap for her life: Selwyn University, biophysics degree, graduate fellowship, research lab. Now, it was all ashes. She pulled out her old duffel bag and began packing. Jeans. Hoodies. Toothbrush. Laptop. Passport. Her aunt's prepaid card. And in a small envelope taped inside a notebook, the $100 she'd earned tutoring local middle schoolers. She paused only once, when she saw her framed acceptance letter to Selwyn. Her fingers traced the edge of the glass, then she gently tucked it into the side pocket of her bag. Outside her window, the sound of a car engine rolled up the gravel drive. Damon's new vehicle, sleek, silver, humming with entitlement. Miriam's laughter floated from below. Alan's voice, excited, animated. Not a single knock on her door. Not a single word to her. She sat down at her desk. Typed a short email to Selwyn's admissions office. Due to unexpected financial difficulties, I must respectfully decline my admission. Then another message. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Don't look for me. She turned off her phone, removed the SIM card, and tossed it in the trash. With her backpack slung over one shoulder, Elara opened the window and climbed out, just like she had on those summer nights when she'd sneak away to the fields and dream under the stars. But this wasn't a dream anymore. Her feet hit the earth. And she walked. No plan. No destination. Just $100 in her pocket. And in her heart, the kind of fire only betrayal can ignite. A fire that would one day build an empire. But for now, all Elara Gray had was a quiet resolve and the open road. The bus station on the edge of Ridgeview wasn't much more than a concrete bench and a half-broken vending machine, but to Elara, it felt like a gate between two worlds. She clutched the one-way ticket to Westbrook, a mid-sized city an hour north, and stared down at her dwindling savings, $86.27. The ride had eaten more of her cash than she expected. She didn't care. No turning back now. The bus rattled through desert roads and aging suburbs, the landscape smeared with golden hour hues as the sun dipped behind distant hills. Elara pressed her forehead to the cool glass, watching the world blur past. Her mind wandered between everything she'd left behind and the vast unknown ahead. By the time she stepped off the bus, the sky had shifted to indigo, and the air smelled faintly of gas fumes and summer rain. A 24-hour diner sat across the street, glowing in the dark like a beacon. She crossed without hesitation. Inside, it was a flickering world of formica tables, buzzing fluorescents, and coffee-stained menus. Elara slid into the last booth near the back, her backpack pressed against her side like armor. A waitress in her mid-50s approached, balancing a tray of empty plates. Her name tag read Irene. 5 faded stars were stitched beneath it. Coffee? Irene asked, already pouring. Thanks, Elara murmured. She sipped the bitter brew, feeling its warmth snake through the exhaustion in her bones. Irene returned a few minutes later. You look like someone with nowhere to be. Elara hesitated. Is that a bad thing? Sometimes. Depends if you're running from something or to something. Elara offered a faint smile. A bit of both. The waitress studied her a moment, then said, We need help. Graveyard shift. Kitchen mostly. $12 an hour, plus pooled tips. You interested? Elara blinked. I don't have ID. Not on me. Irene shrugged. You seem honest. And I've hired worse. A pause. Then Elara nodded. Yes. I'll take it. Good. There's a weekly rate motel down 2 blocks. Ask for Dave. Tell him Irene sent you, and he'll knock $20 off. That night, Elara unlocked a tiny motel room that smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. The sheets were rough, the AC barely worked, but she had a roof, a lock, and her own space, something she hadn't felt in weeks. She dropped her backpack on the floor and slumped onto the bed. Her laptop sat in the side pouch, still holding the email from Selwyn. She stared at it. Then slowly opened a blank document. Clear Path Tutoring. Elite academic coaching by a Selwyn admitted scholar. She paused. Selwyn admitted was still technically true. Over the next few hours, she wrote a full-service menu, subjects offered, rates, availability. She created a clean, sharp logo using basic design tools. Her time in AP Comp Sci and Journalism Club paid off. She listed her credentials under a new name, Z Carter, a persona that gave her space to breathe, to escape the baggage of being Elara Gray. By sunrise, the site was live. She spent $30 on business cards at the local print shop and left a few in the diner before her shift. That evening, she returned to the motel, scrubbed dishes still fresh on her arms, and found an email waiting in her inbox. Subject: tutoring inquiry. A guest at the motel, Mr. Delka, had seen her flyer. His daughter needed help in biology. Desperate before finals. Willing to pay $40 an hour. Elara stared at the screen. Her throat tightened. This was it. She responded immediately. The next day, she walked into room 207, laptop in hand. Ma Yadalka, 15 and overwhelmed, greeted her with a timid smile. "Do you really go to Selwyn?" Maya asked. "Was supposed to," Elara replied. "Life had other plans. But I still know my way around a Punnett Square." After one session, Maya's father booked 5 more. By the end of the week, he told 2 neighbors. Within 3 weeks, Elara was tutoring every afternoon, from the motel lobby to public libraries to the occasional wealthy home in Westbrook Hills. She charged $60 an hour now. Still under market for elite coaching, but enough to turn heads. And the parents? They didn't care about her name. They wanted results. Z. Carter was giving them just that. She worked nights at the diner and days with her clients. Some weeks she slept 4 hours, others she skipped meals to afford printing supplies or bus fare. But she kept building. Kept growing. Irene became her sounding board. At 3 a.m., between refilling syrup jars and inventory checks, they'd talk numbers and margins. "You've got a head for business," Irene said one night, chewing a pencil. "But you're dangerous because you care too much." Elara laughed. "Is that a bad thing? Only if you want to be rich and miserable. But if you want to change the game? It's the only thing that works." One afternoon, a client's mother, Mrs. Talbot, said, half joking, "You're a miracle worker. If I could clone you, every parent in the district would pay double." That night, Elara couldn't sleep. "Clone me? No. Scale me? Yes." She messaged 3 peers, all Ivy League admits who had deferred enrollment. She offered them a simple deal. 70% of client fees. Use her methods, brand, scheduling system. Work under ClearPath Tutoring. 2 said yes immediately. By month 3, she had 5 tutors. By month 6, they had expanded to 3 cities. Elara quit the diner, though she still helped Irene with bookkeeping every Sunday. Loyalty mattered to her, more now than ever. She lived cheap. No car, no luxuries. Every dollar was reinvested into growth or carefully chosen investments in education, tech, and low-risk stocks, tips she picked up from client parents. In her motel room turned office, a small sticky note above her desk read, "They bet on him. I bet on me." And week by week, she was winning that bet. By the time Elara opened her 6th tutoring hub, she wasn't sleeping more than 4 hours a night. But she didn't care. The exhaustion wasn't a weight, it was fuel. Every text from a parent thanking her, every student who aced an exam, every new city that brought in more clients. It was proof. Proof that she wasn't just surviving. She was building. ClearPath Tutoring had become more than a side hustle. It was a brand, sleek, reliable, elite. Her tutors wore matching polos, used identical materials, followed structured curriculums she personally designed. Her online dashboard for parent reports and lesson tracking was so polished a local private school offered to license it. But Elara said no. She wasn't here to be absorbed. She was here to lead. In the evenings, she still stopped by Irene's diner. The small back office smelled like old receipts and cheap hair freshener, but it was her favorite think tank. Irene, sleeves rolled up and calculator always nearby, became part mentor, part therapist. "You know what your real skill is?" Irene asked one night while balancing payroll. "You make chaos look like structure. People trust that." Elara leaned back in her chair. "That's because I had to find order in a house that only believed in one dream, and it wasn't mine." The older woman gave her a long look. "You're still proving something." "I know," Elara replied. "And I'm not done yet." Everything shifted one Wednesday afternoon at a client's house in Westbrook Hills. It was the kind of place that had glass walls and its own indoor pool. Elara was coaching a student named Lily on a university entrance essay when her eyes landed on a document spread out on the kitchen table nearby. Blueprints. Electrical schematics. Project notes. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, she simply recognized the symbols. Years of science fair experiments and late-night research had trained her to notice patterns. Lily noticed her stare. "That's my dad's company. They're working on some next-gen energy tech." Elara blinked. "Like battery storage?" "Yeah." His team's stuck. Something about the prototype's discharge curve being unstable. Those words lit something in Elara. A memory of her own makeshift project about lithium-ion degradation that won state honors in high school. She walked over, peered at the notes. The core concept was promising, but flawed. Very flawed. That night, she stayed up researching. White papers. Patents. Market trends. She barely noticed the time passing until sunrise filtered through her motel blinds. What she found stunned her. The company, Solaris Dynamics, was nearing collapse. Their idea had merit, but the execution was off. Investors were pulling out. They needed help, and fast. Elara hesitated. She had no engineering degree. No formal business background. But she understood this, both the science and the story it needed to tell. So she reached out. Not directly. That would have been reckless. Instead, she leveraged what she'd built, her reputation with high-income families, her track record of precision, and the respect she'd earned under the name Z. Carter. She crafted a message to Jason Lowe, CEO of Solaris Dynamics, and father of Lily. "Dear Mr. Lowe, I understand your company is facing challenges with your modular energy storage system. I believe I've identified the critical inefficiencies and have a solution. If you're open to unconventional perspectives and bold ideas, I'd appreciate 30 minutes of your time. Z. Carter." It took 3 follow-ups and 1 perfectly timed reference from a mutual client before she got her chance. The office tower downtown shimmered with mirrored glass. It was the kind of building Elara used to pass as a kid, imagining the people inside had everything figured out. Now, she was one of them. Jason Lowe was in his early 50s, stern but curious. His assistant led her into a minimalist conference room with a long glass table and a projector screen already humming. "You've got one shot," he said as he walked in. "Impress me." Elara opened her laptop, her fingers calm despite the storm in her chest. She walked him through her analysis. Explained the technical errors in their voltage stabilization system. Proposed a redesign using affordable, scalable materials. Outlined a rollout strategy based on peak demand zones and low barrier entry markets. And most importantly, she didn't just talk theory. She backed it with mock schematics, competitor comparisons, and risk mitigations. She had built it all in 3 days. By the time she finished, Jason wasn't looking at her as a kid anymore. He leaned back, crossed his arms. "You said you don't have a degree?" "No," she said. "But I built 6 education centers, trained over 20 tutors, managed revenue across 3 cities, and studied energy storage systems for 5 years as a personal obsession. Does that count?" He laughed. Then stood. "I'll offer you 30% equity if you deliver the prototype by end of quarter." She didn't hesitate. "Make it 40%. And I want full control over the technical side." Jason's brow arched. "You negotiate like someone who's already won." She met his eyes. "Because I have. I just haven't been paid yet." The next 3 months were a blur. Elara moved into a small apartment closer to the Solaris R&D facility and worked alongside a skeleton crew of engineers. At first, they questioned her. Some rolled their eyes at her age. One even called her the intern with a god complex. That ended the day she solved their efficiency bottleneck in a 12-hour coding sprint. Respect came quickly after that. She became the problem solver, bridging science and systems, turning deadweight into action plans. The redesigned prototype hit performance benchmarks 2 weeks early. When they unveiled it at the Green Horizons Tech Expo, investors swarmed their booth. And just like that, Elara Carter became more than a tutoring genius. She became a name in energy innovation. Articles followed. Blogs. Interviews. Industry whispers. The young founder disrupting power grids. Her face wasn't public yet, she kept it that way. To the world, Z. Carter was a calculated mystery. But behind the scenes, her net worth shot into 8 figures. Elara didn't splurge. She moved carefully, investing in struggling tech startups with potential, buying them out under holding companies she created with Irene's help. Every acquisition was strategic. Quiet. She was building a fortress. And no one from her past even knew her name anymore. One night, as she stood on the rooftop of her new building, overlooking the Westbrook skyline, Irene called. "I read about your battery thing," she said. "Big deal." Elara chuckled. "One of many to come." A pause. "You happy, Kit?" Elara looked out over the glowing city. "Not happy. Not yet. But I'm not finished." And in that quiet, windswept moment, she realized she never would be, not until she proved something even bigger. Not to them. To herself. It had been nearly a decade since Elara Gray, now known exclusively in business circles as Z Carter, stepped foot anywhere remotely tied to her old life. And yet, on a brisk Friday morning in early spring, her black sedan cruised through the very streets she once ran away from. As the city skyline came into view, Elara's eyes were fixed and unreadable. The name Greystone Ventures sat at the top of a confidential investor file in her lap, the new name of the company that had once belonged to her stepfather, Alan, and the so-called visionary son they bet everything on, Damon. The numbers were grim. Revenues had plummeted. Their once prized AI supply chain system was dead in the water. Their patents were outdated. The only thing holding them together was borrowed time and hollow confidence. Damon had convinced the board to rebrand the company and pitch one last grand idea, a nearly familiar renewable battery system, almost a carbon copy of what Elara had perfected 3 years ago under Solaris Dynamics. They were trying to survive all for innovation. Irony tasted sharp on her tongue. "Do they know who requested the meeting?" Elara asked, still reviewing the presentation she would deliver. "No, ma'am," her assistant Maria replied. "The invite came from ClearPath Holdings, under your shell fund. They just know you're a potential investor." Elara smiled slightly. "Perfect." As they pulled up to the building, the memories hit, not with sadness, but with certainty. This was where her stepfather used to pace the halls talking about legacy. Where Miriam would brag about Damon's projects at investor luncheons. Where she, the straight-A daughter, was an afterthought. Today, she wasn't walking in for approval. She was walking in to take control. The receptionist barely looked up. "Investor meeting is on the 12th floor. Conference room A." Elevator music hummed faintly as the numbers ticked upward. Elara stood perfectly still, tailored navy blue power suit crisp, her reflection sharp in the brushed steel. Ding! The doors opened to a scene frozen in time. The same glass walls. The same smug art pieces. But the tension in the air was unmistakable. Alan was already seated at the head of the table. Miriam sat beside him, her lipstick perfect but her eyes anxious. Damon lounged across the room, legs crossed, eyes glued to his phone. The tech bro persona hadn't changed. Not one of them looked up when she entered. Not until the assistant said, "Miss Carter is here." Alan stood first. "Ah, Miss Carter, thank you for coming. We've heard a lot about ClearPath's impressive portfolio." She shook his hand. His fingers trembled slightly. "Let's begin," Elara said, placing her laptop on the table. She tapped the screen. Charts, graphs, and performance breakdowns lit up behind her. "Your company," she began, "has been bleeding capital for the last 5 quarters. Strategic missteps include misallocated R&D budgets, unsustainable licensing fees, and repeated failures to bring prototypes to scalable markets." Damon shifted in his chair. "That's a gross oversimplification." Elara raised a brow. "Is it?" She tapped again. A spreadsheet of product failures appeared. Each column titled with a year, each row named after one of Damon's failed ventures. Alan frowned. Miriam's fingers trembled as she reached for her water. "What are you suggesting?" Alan asked, voice tight. "I'm suggesting that if you want this company to survive, it needs a complete restructure." "Which includes?" Miriam asked, though her voice was already small. "3 conditions," Elara said calmly. 1. Damon steps down. No executive role, no discretionary budget. He's out. "What?" Damon shot up, color draining from his face. "You can't." 2. Elara interrupted, "Both of you retire. Permanently. No consultancy roles. No advisory positions. Greystone needs a clean slate. Silence. And 3. She let the pause hang. You acknowledge, right here and now, that choosing Damon over my future was the best thing you ever did, because it made me into the woman standing in front of you. There it was. Her name, spoken like a ghost they thought they buried in the past. Miriam gasped softly, eyes wide and glassy. Damon's mouth opened, but no words came. Alan sat back down slowly, his skin pale. "Elara?" he asked, almost in disbelief. "You're Z. Carter?" She nodded. "I changed it legally 6 years ago. You'd know that if you'd looked for me." Miriam's eyes brimmed. "We did look." "No, you waited," Elara said coldly. "Waited for me to fail. Waited for me to come crawling back like some backup plan. But I didn't. And now here we are." She turned the screen one last time. A slide labeled Asset Holdings and Influence lit up. ClearPath Holdings. Solix Tech. Meridian Education Group. And at the bottom, Greystone Ventures, 42% debt controlled via convertible instruments. "I own nearly half your outstanding debt," Elara said. "And if you don't meet my conditions, I'll let it default. The company collapses within 3 months." Alan slumped in his seat. Damon paced. "This is blackmail." "No," Elara replied, unbothered. "This is business." Silence stretched as tension thickened. Then Alan nodded. "Fine. We accept." Elara clicked her laptop closed. "Good. Contracts will arrive Monday." She moved to leave, but paused. "Oh, and Miriam?" Her mother looked up. "Remember when you told me to go to community college? My foundation just funded a new science building there. In my name." Miriam's lips parted, but no words came. Elara gave them one final look. Not of revenge. Of triumph. "Sometimes," she said, "you don't need to burn bridges. You just have to walk so far beyond them, no one can ever catch up." Then she left. Outside, Maria held out a cup of green tea, steeped exactly 4 minutes. "How'd it go?" she asked, holding the door. Elara took a sip. "The taste was perfect. Just like we planned," she said, smiling. "But we'll leave the part about dishwashing and mop buckets out of the company history, yeah?" Maria laughed. "Of course. Though I think it's the best part." Elara looked back once at the glass tower that had once stood like a wall between her and the world. Now, it was just another name about to change. Soon, Greystone Ventures would become Carter Dynamics. Built not with handouts. Not with apologies. But with vision. And a girl who once had nothing but $100 and something to prove. The skyline glowed as dusk set over the city. From the corner office atop the Carter Dynamics building, once Greystone Ventures, Elara stood with her arms folded, watching the light bend and scatter across glass towers and distant hills. The name Carter Dynamics gleamed in gold across the conference screen behind her. Not Gray. Not Damon. Not Alan. Carter. A name she chose. A name she earned. She turned toward the framed artifacts on her wall, her first tutoring business license, a worn $100 bill pressed between glass, and a weathered acceptance letter to Selwyn University. Right beside it, a diner name tag that read, Z, Night Shift. Irene had sent it to her 2 weeks ago, accompanied by a note that simply read, "Never forget where you started." She never would. The soft chime of the elevator echoed outside her office, followed by a knock on the glass door. Maria, her executive assistant, stepped in with her usual calm confidence. "He's here," she said. Elara didn't have to ask who. She straightened the collar of her navy blue jacket and nodded. "Send him in." Alan entered, more slowly than he used to. His silver hair was neatly combed, but he looked smaller somehow, like the weight of 1,000 regrets clung to his tailored suit. He glanced around the room, taking in the high-tech displays, the modern architecture, and finally, the framed documents lining her wall. His eyes landed on the Selwyn letter. "You kept it," he said quietly. Elara didn't look away. "Of course. I earned that." He gave a small nod and stepped forward. "I didn't come here to argue. I came to thank you." She raised an eyebrow. "For saving the company," he clarified. "You didn't have to. Not after everything we did." "No," Elara agreed. "I didn't." He swallowed hard. Then, Why? She paused, thinking back to the moment she stood at that kitchen table a decade ago, college letters in her lap, her future ripped away like it meant nothing. Because I needed to prove to myself, she said softly, that I could build something greater than what you took from me. And because fixing what you broke meant more to me than revenge. Alan nodded slowly. We failed you. You chose Damon, she replied, her voice still calm. Over and over again. I wasn't your investment. I was your insurance plan. He looked down. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I hope you know how proud I am now. Elara turned toward the window. It's not pride I needed, she said. It was respect. Silence settled in again. I retired last week, Alan added. As per your condition. She nodded. And Damon? Gone. No access. No stake. No more company funds. Good. He hesitated, then gestured to the nameplate on her desk. You kept our last name. She smiled faintly. I kept mine. Carter was always mine. Parker was just a lesson. Later that week, Elara stood before a sea of bright-eyed students and educators at Elm Ridge Community College, the same school her mother once condescendingly told her to consider as a backup. Now, a new science wing, funded entirely by her foundation, stood proudly behind her. State-of-the-art labs, scholarship programs, internship pipelines, and one golden plaque by the entrance. The Carter Center for Scientific Discovery. Donated by Z. Carter, former tutor. Relentless dreamer. Elara cut the ribbon, shook hands, and smiled for photos, but her favorite moment came later, when she passed a group of students debating physics equations on the lawn. They had no idea who she had once been. Only who she was now. And that was enough. The media called her the quiet titan, investors admired her efficiency, but what they really feared was her vision. She didn't just rebuild her family's failed company, she transformed it. Carter Dynamics became a global leader in renewable energy storage, holding patents that disrupted entire industries. But Elara wasn't interested in being famous. She turned down interviews, declined magazine covers. Let her work speak louder than her name. Still, rumors spread, of a woman who built an empire with only $100 and a fire in her heart. At night, when the offices were quiet, she'd sometimes open a private email folder labeled unsent. It contained messages she once wrote to her younger self. Some from that motel room. Others from her diner days. Messages full of fear, anger, and determination. She never deleted them. Because they reminded her that every version of herself, even the scared, broke, and betrayed girl, was part of the woman she had become. One evening, Maria joined her on the rooftop balcony with 2 mugs of tea. Everything's changing, Maria said, gazing over the lights. It always is, Elara replied. But now I'm the one steering the change. Maria hesitated, then asked, do you ever regret not telling them sooner? Who you were? Elara shook her head. No. They didn't need to know who I was until I was someone they couldn't ignore. Maria smiled. That's power. Elara finished her tea. No. That's peace. Months later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. The cursive was familiar. It was from her mother. Elara sat at her desk and opened it. Elara. If I could go back and change what we did, I would. But I know that isn't enough. I saw the plaque at the Science Center. I cried for the first time in years. Not because I was ashamed, though I am, but because I realized I never really knew you. And now the world does. I hope someday you'll let me know you again too. With all my love. Mom. Elara folded the letter slowly. She didn't cry. But she did stare out the window for a long time afterward. Forgiveness would come on her terms. Maybe not today. Maybe not ever. But she had the power now, not to hurt, not to punish, but to choose. Back inside, the board was waiting for her to approve a global expansion into Asia. Another market, another milestone. As she stepped into the meeting, someone offered her a compliment on the recent cover story in Fortune magazine. Elara simply nodded. Because legacy isn't loud. It's quiet decisions. Late nights. Silent steps no one sees, until the whole world is forced to look up. And when they do, they'll see the name etched into skyscrapers, science labs, and startup incubators. Carter. Built not with money, but with purpose.